Welcome to Therapy in the Great Outdoors, the podcast where we explore the business and practice of nature-based pediatric therapy of all kinds. If you're an outdoor-loving pediatric practitioner in the fields of occupational, physical, or speech therapy, social work, or mental health, this podcast will help you start and grow a successful nature-based practice or program. I am the ever honest, always 100% real, you'll hear it all on this podcast, Dr. Laura Park Figueroa. I'm a pediatric OT with over 20 years of experience, and I run a thriving nature-based practice with profitable locations in 2 different states and multi-six figures in revenue. I also host the free online community at therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com to help you pursue your nature-based therapy dreams too. Are you ready to take action on those dreams? Let's jump in. Hello, friends. Well, I am sad to report that this is the second time I will be recording this episode. Maybe it will be even better than it would have been the first time because my mic was giving me all kinds of issues and it recorded only parts of what I said the first time I recorded for 40 minutes. So learn from my mistakes is the title of this episode. If you ever do podcasts, test your mic first. That's the first mistake you can learn from here. I'm going to talk today about all of my business metrics from 2024 and the mistakes I made in 2024 to help you not make those same mistakes in your own practice. So I am going to talk about both businesses. So I run, if you are new here, welcome. This will be a little orientation to all of the things that I do. As the podcast host here, I have 2 different businesses. So I have been running my nature-based pediatric therapy practice for 10 years now officially. I started in 2015. So I guess technically by the end of this year, I'll be 10 years. So this is year 9. We're going into year 10. So that business has been going for almost a decade now. And I started it in California, but I live in Madison, Wisconsin now. So most of the business is in California. I have a small branch of the practice here in Madison. And I will talk mostly about the numbers related to the practice and the learning from my running my practice, because if you are listening to this, you are probably listening to this because you want to run a nature-based therapy practice or program of some sort. And so I think that's the information that is most relevant to you. However, out of that business, I launched another business called Therapy in the Great Outdoors, which this podcast is part of. And Therapy in the Great Outdoors, I call it TGO for short, TGO. And the TGO business is a business that exists to support nature-based pediatric therapists. So we have a free membership community, which you may be a part of if you're listening to this. We have paid member areas in that community where you get access to me and some other resources that we have to support your work. And then I have my nature-based therapy certification, which is called the Contigo Approach. And that will be open here coming up Friday for our February cohort. If you're interested, you can go to contigoapproach.com. I won't go into that much more here, but just an FYI. And then we also have my business coaching program, which is called The Hive. So those are the things I had on offer this year in the TGO business. I'm going to start with talking about the TGO business and hopefully be very brief about that and then get into the numbers and everything for the practice, which I think will be more relevant to what you all are probably doing in your day-to-day lives. So gross revenue this year for the TGO business was around, I'm going to use averages. It's just tedious to say $122,343. So business this year was $122,000 gross revenue for TGO, but it was not profitable. This is the first time I have had a business that is not profitable at the end of the year, meaning we spent more than we brought in. Now, I still have money in the bank account because I've been running this business for several years and I had money in the bank account. So I'm not in debt or anything in the business. And this is something you will learn if you start running a business. You have to get good at managing finances and understanding the finances of your business. This is something that is so important. I work with people on this all the time. This is probably the most questions I get are about marketing and about finances. So basically, the reason why the Tigo business lost money this year, I think, upon my reflection, was due to a few things, which was my husband quit his job, I think, at the end of August. So September, October, November, December, he was out of work. I was fully supporting him quitting his job. He was very miserable in his old job. And it felt really good to be like, well, we can live on my business income. So you can quit your job. That feels like a good thing, like a positive thing, and was a moment for me as a business owner to be like, wow, that's really cool that after almost a decade of running my businesses, well, my business and then the Tigo business is about 3 years old now. But I was doing some of that work inside of my practice before I started business coaching, long before I split Tigo off into a new business. But basically, it just felt good to be able to say, like, babe, I don't want you to be miserable in your work, and I support you quitting. Quit your job. We'll find something else. We'll make it work. And so I ended up paying myself a little bit too much and had to live on the profit that the business had made in previous years. And also, I hosted a retreat that lost money. So basically, those were two things that I think kind of contributed to the Tigo business not being profitable this year. The most significant revenue source in that business is by far the Contigo nature-based therapy certification. And so that is what I have chosen to lean into this year. And I really feel like I've had to make some hard decisions in this business. So I didn't hit goals last year for how many people I wanted to enroll in all of my programs, really. And what I'm really reflecting on a lot is that this niche is very small. And so there's a balance of having a niche that is focused and big enough to give you a living, which it is a good, I mean, I made good income. I'm not complaining at all. I'm grateful for it. But it is a very small niche, and it is a niche that tends to be pretty frugal with your money. I think you guys are smart to be frugal with your money. And if I can give you a little bit of tough love, I also think that you should be willing to invest, especially when you're running a business. You need to be willing to invest money in order to make that business successful, and invest in your ability to be a really effective and high quality therapist. And I think that is where I'm seeing the numbers in my business. I think maybe, I don't know, this is a guess I'm making, and I didn't even intend to say this. I am an external processor. You guys, sometimes I come to ideas while I am recording these podcasts, and they are not ideas that I had written down in my outline to share. But I think what I'm noticing is that people tend to be much more likely to invest in continuing ed, and they want to be a really good therapist, right? But when you start a business, you're a little hesitant to invest in getting business coaching or business support because you have to pay yourself and you have to be kind of frugal with the money in order to make sure that the business stays successful. And I think that's really smart. So there's a balance, right, of knowing when it is time for you to invest in something and take the risk and put some money down in order to make loads more in income later as a result of that investment in coaching. But I think the fact that the niche is really small, it kind of makes sense that more people would be interested in the therapy certification program that I run, because that's a wider market, right? Like, there are more people who are interested in nature-based therapy than are also interested in running their own business as well as that. So the Hive is going to be closed, at least for the first half of the year. So I usually run the business coaching program, The Hive, in 6-month cohorts. And I have decided not to run it this spring. There were only 4 people who said that they were interested in enrolling when I did my annual survey. And I know from past experience that when people say, I don't know, this was all anonymous, so I'm not calling anyone out, but I just know that 4 people said they were interested in joining The Hive this year. I know that when people say that they are interested in something, it does not mean that they are actually going to enroll. And you can apply this to your own practice as well, in that when a parent or a family says that they're interested in your programming, that doesn't mean that they are necessarily going to actually give you money for your programming or for your therapy services. Until they actually sign the waivers, enroll their child, and put the money down, they are not your customer yet. And so when I looked at the numbers based on that survey, I just felt like to do all of the work that goes into running that program, to have such a small number of people interested in it, it just wasn't worth it for me to attempt to market it and sell it and run it every month. I spend the most time actually on that program because it's weekly calls and upkeeping in the community and answering questions. And so I've decided not to run it, which is really sad because it's my favorite thing. I love that. I love the women that have been in that program so much. And I just, I just feel sad that I don't think the market is there for it right now. And so what I plan to do this year is keep Contigo going. So that will run as it did last year. We will have a cohort we'll have calls. I say cohort, but it's really just calls because you get lifetime access. You can attend calls whenever you want, forever if you want to. As long as we offer it online. I always say that. Lifetime access as long as we offer the program, not for your human life. But anyway, we're running calls in February, May, and October, and you can enroll right before those months. So that's when we will open enrollment for the Contigo certification if you're interested. So I'm going to keep doing Contigo, and I'm going to lean into in-person events. This year, I am going to host another retreat. I am not going to do it at the same facility because it was exorbitantly expensive for what it was, even though it was an amazing location and it was such a beautiful place. But for what we got for the money that I had to pay and the amount I had to charge for the retreat in order to break even and not break even, kind of lose money on it, I am going to host it somewhere else. It will likely be in Florida because I want to be somewhere warm in mid-November when I plan to host it. And Florida is as far south as you can get and still be in the US. So I'm looking at some places there and I will let you guys know as soon as possible when the dates and location is ready for that. And then I'm also going to open a Tigo shop. So this is something I'm going to work on in a leisurely way throughout the year. And I'm not going to give myself firm deadlines and be frenetic and crazy about it. But I am going to slowly kind of add things into a Therapy in the Great Outdoors shop where you can purchase templates and manuals and ebooks and other things that I will write and provide for the community, but they will be paid resources that you can buy and have to help you in running your nature-based practice. I don't have a timeline on when that will be open, but if you're in the community, you will see announcements about it, I'm sure. I'm going to keep the Tigo community free. I know some of you have heard that I was going to possibly transition it to a paid only space, but I think for now I'm going to leave the overall community free, the free discussion area and the directory free. And then we are going to have paid member areas as we do right now that we call them supporting members. It's $9 a month. It's no commitment, cancel anytime, but you get access to a monthly Q&A with me and then also some other really valuable resources for nature-based practice as well as treatment activities, a whole library of treatment activities. So that's kind of the plan for the Tigo business this year. I am really wanting to focus on serving people well. And for that reason, I'm dialing back how much I do for free and trying to really focus on the things I offer where people have invested, even if it's $9 a month, have invested money, because that is where people are the most engaged, the most ready to learn, the most ready to take action. And that's what gives me energy in this business is really seeing the difference that people are making in their communities when they're starting to do nature-based work. So I am really excited about the future of this movement in general of getting kids outdoors. And I think my business might just look a little, sorry, my family's coming home. If you can hear my dog barking like a crazy person in the background, or a crazy dog, I guess I should say. But I'm really excited about what's happening in this community. And I think I am on a path to finding a good balance of how to run the Tigo business in a way that works for me and the way I'm feeling about business right now and the phase that I'm at in my life. And I'll talk about that in a little bit as well, I'm sure. More near the end of the podcast when I reflect on all these numbers and the business reporting from last year. So, all right, let's get into Kids OT. Last year, income for Outdoor Kids OT was $475,000, but we only had $3,500 in profit. You guys, that is less than a 1% profit margin. So we were profitable. Profitable just means that you bring in more money than you spend, but we spent too much money last year. And some of that, I'll give you some reasoning for that about why I think that was. This is a mistake I made that you will learn from, that you can judge me. And then when you've run a business for 9 years, you will be like not feeling crazy because you'll remember that I said this. And then you can be like, oh yeah, remember Laura told me this. One of the things that I do most consistently in my business is I do my business budgeting. I love the system I have. I teach it inside of my Business Bedrocks curriculum, the curriculum we use inside of the Hive for helping people to set up automated systems in their business so that your business can then grow, because that is the system that I built my entire business on, was what I teach inside of that curriculum. And so one of the things I teach in there is a system for business budgeting that is based on the book Profit First, and you use a budgeting software in order to implement that system in the Profit First book. So I am consistent in my budgeting software. Every single month, I go in twice a month. I balance all the money. I give the money a job. I tell it what to do. I save for future expenses, et cetera, et cetera. I'm really good at it. I do it consistently. The reason I'm being so, saying that over and over is that what I'm trying to tell you is that even if you do that, you still have to look at your profit and loss every single month and make sure if the business has lost money or is making money, because your business is not going to be profitable every month. And you need to be aware of that and be planning for that and be paying attention to it. Because in my business, we've been existing for 9 years. And so when I start a year, I have money in the bank account already. So we had about $63,000 or something in the bank account at the beginning of 2024. And what happens is over time during the year, I'm budgeting the money, it's in my bank account, it's in my budgeting software, all accounted for. But when you're not paying attention, you can very easily go into the red, meaning like overspend in your business if you have that previous profit from previous years sitting in your budgeting software, right? So I was seeing it all the time and I was budgeting all the money, but I think there was enough of a cushion there that I just wasn't paying attention closely enough, and I got really close to making the business not be profitable because I had overpaid myself, and I actually had to pay my business back some money at the end of the year in order to make sure the business stayed profitable. I don't lie in my marketing. And one of the things that I always say is my business, my nature-based practice has been profitable every year, including during COVID. And I am proud of that. And I am proud that I knew enough at the end of this year in December to really take a look at my finances to be able to put money back into the business from my personal, that I had taken as personal pay, because my business stayed profitable that way. So in some ways, it was helpful that my husband had gotten a job by now and we were able to do that. Just reminding you that you need to keep a very close eye, do your business budgeting, but also make sure you're looking at the profit loss statement and noting the months that you don't have income, because your business, your cash flow is going to ebb and flow in the business. So money from camp that we have during February and March when people are enrolling for camp, all that money rolls in, right? So the business looks like we have loads of money. We've got like 150 grand or whatever in the bank in the spring. But if I don't earmark that money in my budgeting software, which is what I do, I put a category in my software for payroll for the summer so that I remember to set aside money, because in the summer we have employees working at camp that we have to pay. And if money's not coming in and we haven't earmarked that money that came in February and March for paying those employees in the summer, then you get into a tough situation in your business. And you know what? When you run a business that has employees, they are the ones who get paid. You do not get paid. If there's not money to pay your employees, you don't get paid. They get paid. They get paid first. So That is why being an employee is a much more stable position to be in than being the owner of a business, right? I strongly believe that not all therapists should be. I am not someone who says that anyone can run a business. I don't think that that's true, actually. I think that you need to be very certain that if you run a business, that it is what you really want to do, and that you are really willing to take the risk, and that you are really willing to stay on top of the books and the responsibilities and all the legal stuff you have to do, all of that. I mean, it's the stuff that it's the boring stuff of business that kind of matters behind the scenes that we don't really talk about a lot in public spaces, I think. And so if you are someone who, I thought about doing a podcast on this actually, maybe I will in the future, but if you're someone who just loves treating kids and you think you want to run your own business because you love treating kids, I would say to really do some analysis of, if you love treating kids, what you need to do when you run a business is sometimes give up treating kids in order to work on some of the back of the house business tasks that you need to do. And so it might not be the thing you love to do the most if what you really love doing is direct client care, right? So anyways, that could be a whole other episode, but I went down a rabbit hole as usual. So, okay, so the profit wasn't that great this year in my business. We have put some different systems in place this year to try to keep, this year my goal is to keep 10% profit in the business. Like at the end of the year, I want to have at least 10% saved in savings beyond the savings that we had from previous years. So for example, if we are going to have income of 500K, we actually haven't set our annual revenue goal yet because there's a lot of things going on, growth related, that I won't get into here. It's too much to include in the podcast, but so we don't really know what our annual revenue goal is going to be yet. That will be determined in the next month or so. But for example, let's say we had a revenue goal of 500K. That would mean that I would have 50K saved at the end of the year, 10% of 500K. And I would have it in savings, which would mean if we started this year with 65 or so in our bank account, then that would mean our bank account by the end of the year should have 105, right? If we add 50 to 65, it would be 115 in profit. So basically we would have over 100 grand in our bank account at the end of the year to sit there and be used for in the future for business growth. So I'm hoping that that will be the goal, that we will have a 10% profit margin this year. That is something I am setting for us, and we're putting some real measures in place to make sure that I set that money aside every month. What else happened in my business last year? So I hired my second full-time employee. We have 2 part-time employees and 2 full-time employees now, and 2 contractors who do admin work for us, and then myself as the CEO. And then we have about probably, 12 to 15 volunteers and 2 group assistants. So it's a pretty big team when you consider the volunteers and the other people who help as well, and not just the therapy team, right? We promoted, my first full-time employee was promoted to Chief Operations Officer, COO. So essentially what I am doing now as CEO is teaching her what I did to run the operations of the business. So she's doing marketing, she's doing management of staff, she's doing meetings with staff, she's doing getting, timelines in place for registration and all the things that go on in the business, all the operational systems that need to go on in the business. And I'm essentially, I love business coaching. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I realized that in this way, I could outsource some of my time. Like I could free up some of my time essentially because I want to work on my nonprofit. But the whole reason I did this was to free up my time to allow me to do more work with the nonprofit in order to really get it going and established. So I am essentially coaching my own employee to run my practice. I hope one day that she will own it and buy it when I want to retire, but we'll see about that later. But we're getting structures in place. We have a really good project management platform that we use now, and we have really clear systems, repeating systems in place for us to be in a good place for expansion and growth. So I am super excited about that. And we're marketing to local schools to form partnerships. And we have two partnerships set up that are going to start up in the coming months here. So what I want to share is an interesting topic that came up during our annual planning meeting with the executive team for my practice this last week. So it sounds funny to say executive team, like we are so fancy because we're like corporate, but we're not corporate at all. But it is a term for me and the CFO, who is Nicole, the chief financial officer, because she manages all the finances and all the accounts in our system. And myself, Nicole, and Gabby, who's the COO, we all meet together in order to plan annually for the business, to set revenue goals, to talk about Gabby's bonus structure, which is tied to our annual revenue goal. We talk about the goals for the year. We talk about quarterly goals, like what are we each focused on individually? What are our responsibilities for the next quarter? So we had that meeting the other day, and the topic came up that we were sort of wondering, thinking about, are we saturated? Like, is the market saturated for our services? Because we've had significant growth year over year, minus COVID, which was an exception, right? We've had about 30% growth year over year. This last year, it was 27%. And we talked about if this was sustainable or not as the business gets bigger, because a jump from 100 to 130 is a 30% increase in growth, but it's not, well, I guess 100 to 133,000 would be 30%, but you get what I mean. It's just 30K more in business. But when you do a 30% increase in business when you run a $500,000 practice means that you would be bringing in $150,000 more in business. So that is a really big jump to make. And we were trying to decide if our revenue goal for next year should be a little bit more conservative, and thinking about, is this just how big the business can grow? Because we still have spots in a lot of our groups, and it seems like we are just kind of not getting the number of applications in that we used to get. And so what I want to share with you is I felt really kind of sad after we had that meeting, like, gosh, is this really like how big the business can grow and we're just going to kind of stay here? And so I want to remind you to rely on market research. I did some market research, and I definitely do not think that the market is saturated. I'm thinking about going down that rabbit hole too, but maybe I will save that for a future podcast to help you guys look at metrics and how to determine if a market is there for your service in your area, because that could be a whole 20-minute conversation probably. So market research, when I say that, what I mean is good old Google. Just ask Google questions about your area, and you would be amazed at how much information you can get, and to rely on those numbers. Like, look at numbers before you pay attention to your emotions as you're running your business. So that episode, I will do that in the future and do another episode on that topic in particular, so I can go into more details about kind of how I do market research and what metrics you might want to look at to determine if there's a market in your area for nature-based services. Other things I am learning, I don't know if this is a mistake I made, more it's just something I'm learning, but as the business grows, I've noticed that I don't know the answers to all the questions that people ask me now in my practice, because everybody has a role in the practice. There are leaders in my practice who have roles that I used to do, and I don't know all of the systems that they are implementing, right? So as the business owner, you need to make sure that systems are documented so that if anything happens to a key employee, or if someone quits, like, the business would still be able to continue to function. So you personally will not know all the systems in your business when it gets big enough. And that is okay. that is the way a business is supposed to run. When you think about a gigantic corporation, right? Think about like Jeff Bezos. Like, he doesn't know what every single person at Amazon, what every single system in Amazon is. That's okay. That's how it should be if your business is actually in a position for growth. You should have people who are doing their jobs, who are creating systems for you, and know that their job is to systematize whatever they are doing so that it can then be given to someone else when they go into a different leadership position in the business. So you personally won't know the systems. You have to trust people to do their jobs and give up control. Like, it is really hard to do as a owner of a business to give up control and to trust other people to do a good job. But I will tell you, people will do a good job. People will do a good job. You can trust that people will if you have a good hiring system in place and you get a good team around you. I am so grateful for my team. We're in a good place right now, and I'm super happy with the team and how they work together. And I feel like everyone is kind of in a role that really, really suits them well, and they love their work. They love what they're doing. It's like everybody is if you've read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, which is a book I don't recommend for new business owners, but if you're growing a practice and about to hire employees, it's a really good book to read. And one of the things he talks about is getting the right people in the right seats on the bus. And so I feel like that in my practice right now. We've worked really hard to get everyone in a seat that is their best fit for what they really love to do. So along those lines, now that I've said how much I love my employees, I have a little caveat for you if you are running a business, that your job as CEO is I see it as twofold, and they're equally important, right? Maybe one being a little more important than the other. So your job is to keep your business profitable and keep your employees happy, making their jobs as easy as possible. So really, I would say keeping the business profitable is more important than keeping your employees happy and making their jobs easy, obviously, because your business has to keep running. You have to have money in the business to be able to keep running the business. So one thing that I am learning, and the mistakes that I have made in the past, I don't think so much this last year, but something I've reflected on, is I'm better at it this year, I guess, that I have probably in the past been too transparent with my entire team about the finances in the business or about whatever's going on the back end of the business. And I've learned to show discretion with what I share with employees in order to balance the needs of the employees with the needs of the business. And this is just a tight line that you always have to walk when you are running a business. You have to constantly balance the needs of the business with the sometimes not informed request of employees. So what I mean by not informed is that employees will never understand the logistics that have to go on behind the scenes in the business to make their jobs easier. So there is a lot of conversation that goes on about policies and benefits and logistics and budget and all the conversations that go on behind the scenes. Your employees, that's not their job to be in on those conversations, right? But they will never understand how complex things are on the back end of the business. And so people in general are going to be asking questions that are for their own self-interest. And that is just human nature. This is not a dig on my employees or any of your employees. Like, it's just human nature that people are self-interested, self-motivated. It's like primal. It's human survival, right? So it's not a judgment on any human being for being self-interested. They should be. But your employees don't owe you anything. They can go out and get another job. They have free will just like anyone else, right? So but they are going to ask you for things that will not work in the business. And if you continually bow to the demands or the questions or the request of your employees, you will very quickly not have a profitable business, or you will just be exhausted because you will constantly be trying to meet the demands of everyone. So you have to, as a business owner, be discreet about what you share. And that's not to say be duplicitous. Is that a word? you know what I mean? Don't lie to people. I don't want you to withhold information that they need to have, but you also don't need to be sharing with them every single thing that goes on the back end of the business. And it's been really hard for me because I've had this podcast I've been podcasting since 2018. So my employees have been able to hear like how much the business makes, the profit, all my thoughts about the business, everything. So I'm kind of just a transparent person that way, but I would recommend to all of you running your practices that you just show restraint and be discreet when you decide what you want to share with employees while still being as transparent as possible with them. I feel like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth saying this, like be transparent, but also be discreet. But I hope you guys understand what I mean by that. So lastly, I'm going to say another reflection that I've had this year is that being a CEO can be pretty lonely at times. I have a great team around me and I feel like I couldn't have a better team. And yet it is a lonely place to know that the responsibility is on you. Like ultimately, the responsibility of the business sits on your shoulders as the owner. So you can't expect your employees to appreciate you or understand what you're going through as the owner of the business. It really helps to have colleagues or other business owners that you can talk to rather than employees, because it can lend itself to making for a not healthy dynamic if you're confiding in one of your employees. So that being said, my goal for 2025 is really, I had this idea the other day that I need to dial back what I'm doing until I'm actually bored and I feel excited about work again, because I am the type of person who is go, 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 go. Like I've been go, go, going for 9 years now, 9+ years. And lately there have been a lot of things that have happened in my life over the last year where I've just started to feel like a slowing down of my energy. And I don't mean it in a bad way. Like maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't. Maybe this is just how I am now, but I'm trying to lean into it. And I'm being really, I think some of it is because of my age and the phase of life I'm in. I only have one kid left living at home. He's 14. And I, the other day, realized he only has like 4.5 years left with us before he likely will be living somewhere else. And I got really sad. And I think it just made me realize the preciousness of life and how time is very precious. And I was not feeling that when my kids were young. I wanted it over. I was tired. It's exhausting to have young kids. Like if you are in the thick of it right now, like my hat's off to you. I am praying for you, truly. I don't say that like I'm not meaning that as a trite thing to say, because I do think about young moms a lot, because the stress is really hard when you have young children at home and multiple young children. So I remember it well. I am in a different phase of life now, and I think I still was kind of acting or working very frenetically, right? I'm like constantly working, constantly more to do, constantly feeling like I'm not keeping up, quote unquote, with whoever. One of my things I'm going to do this year too is stay off of social media, because I'll still be on it because of work, but I'm going to be not there as much. And so I really want to not overwork this year and just rest and cook food. My son has gotten really into cooking and meal prep. He makes like giant meals and then puts them all in containers so he has burrito bowls for the week or whatever. And it was just the most fun the other night cooking with him for 2.5 hours. The cleanup was not so fun. But anyway, 14-year-olds don't care if they use 40 bowls while they cook food and throw chicken and cheese and cilantro all over the kitchen. But it was precious time with him. And I want to just exercise and be outside a lot and have margin. I'm going to read a book called Margin. I think it's a Christian author, so if you get it or think of getting it, just be aware of that. But it was recommended by a Charlotte Mason homeschool podcast that I listen to. So I'm getting it, and I want margin in my life. That is what I want. I want the ability to not feel like I am constantly having to do something else. And so I'm trying to be more intentional. The word mindful, I feel like, is overused so much, like with the whole mindfulness movement. I think it's great, but it's just overused a lot. I just want to slow down and not feel like I have to work so frenetically and so crazy. So my mantra is dial it back until I'm bored. So just dial it back. Don't feel like I have to hit arbitrary deadlines if I don't actually have to hit those deadlines. And I want to be intentional with my work and work when I feel the energy is there for working, and also not beat myself up if I don't feel my normal energy for working. So it's not that I don't have energy in general. I do have energy. Like I feel healthy and like, it's not a lack of energy as far as like life energy. I'm not struggling to wake up in the morning or anything like that, but it's just this intense and relentless drive to make sure that my business is just so successful and, growing year over year growth. Like I don't know, you guys, I just feel, I guess the word peace would actually be a good word to use. I feel a peace about where my businesses are at right now, and I don't feel the need to work frenetically. And I guess I'm sharing this because I want you to know that it can feel frenetic and crazy, the early years when you're starting a business and running a practice. And you can, though, get to a point where you have a great team around you and you're able to dial it back a little bit, even until you're bored. I'm almost never bored. I'm too interested in so many things, and I'm so curious, and I'm always reading like 9 books at a time. And, it's like, it's just who I am. So maybe this is a healthy thing, you guys. Maybe it's a good thing for me. So I used to say on my old podcast on Mind Your OT Business, I used to end every episode by saying, small steps make great gains over time. So until next time, mind your OT business. Now, therapy in the great outdoors does not lend itself as well to an ending. I do have my little ending sentence that I always say about getting outdoors and connecting and reflecting and all that. But I do really think it's interesting that for many years, I reminded myself every time I did an episode, small steps make great gains over time. So take small steps in your nature-based work. I hope that this episode shared something with you about a mistake that you can avoid, and let you know that you are not alone if you make mistakes in running your business. I'm still making them 9 years in here, and I'm sure I'll make them this year too. So I'm in it with you, y'all. So anyways, that's it. Don't forget Contigo. I think I said it at the beginning, but I can't remember because remember I had to record this podcast twice, so I can't remember what I said. Contigo Nature-Based Therapy Certification is open starting on Friday, January 24th, and we will be open until 5 p.m. on the 31st of January for you to enroll in the certification program. So you can go to contigoapproach.com to get all that information. And I think that's it. I will talk to you guys next week. Until then, get outside, connect, reflect, and enjoy therapy in the great outdoors. Bye.